We have some dedications for our Torah study today. One is for the Refuah Shlema, a complete healing of mind, body, and soul, for Penina Bat Monir. And also I'd like to dedicate our learning that the hostages should come home now and alive. Yesterday was the 700th day of the hostages being held in Gaza. And it also was my Hebrew birthday yesterday. And my wish was that the hostages should be returned now and alive. So we dedicate their learning to them. Okay, so destiny, Teshuva, and free will, some easy light topics. You know, we have Rosh Hashanah in just over 2 weeks' time. So this should be on our mind about how do we fix or tikkun our midot, our deeds and our character. I'm sure none of us are perfect because then we wouldn't be human, we'd be AI. But even AI is not perfect. So this topic today is really, really something that should be on our hearts and minds as we're thinking about upcoming Yamim Norim as we're in this time period of Elul. There are two schools of thought that are on opposing ends of the spectrum. One is that we are a product of our upbringing, a product of where we grew up, a product of our socioeconomic status, and we can't change anything. So much so that we might think we have free will in our decisions, but it's actually, they could predetermine what we'll decide. The other end is that we can change our lives in 21 days. You can take on any new habit within 21 days. Now, I don't know about you, that either one seems a little far-fetched for me. And we know that there's 2 Jews and 3 opinions, so maybe that third opinion is the third way. So we're gonna look at some texts today and see what is that third way that Judaism shares with us and teaches us on how we can live our life. That we can be somewhere of that everything is predestined for us based on who we were born to and how we grew up, and that we can change our life in just a drop of a coin. But that change is possible. So does someone wanna read the text, either in English or in Hebrew, in the first box? Yeah? Here, let's pass this over here. Thank you so much.
Okay, right? Yes. Okay. First stop. The deeds of the fathers are a sign of our children. For the children.
Great. Maseh avot siman levanim. The deeds of our fathers are a sign for the children. And this could be read in 2 different perspectives, if we want to look at it that way, or in 2 paradigms, that the deeds of our fathers, we have zechut. So we have merit based on what our ancestors have done for us for good things, that we will also have good things if we're deserving or undeserving, because they've laid that foundation for us. It can also be read that whatever our forefathers did or went through, we too are destined to go through. That somehow the journey they laid for us as a foundation is something that we are destined to repeat, almost like a carousel or a Ferris wheel going round and round. We could also see it as maybe the errors of our fathers is something we're destined to repeat, which is sometimes a hard pill for us to swallow. And we're gonna look at something that is said in box 3 and 4 about that. Even we might have merit from our ancestors, but the ills of our ancestors also we might be punished for. And we're gonna try and figure out, what does that actually mean? Is there a different way to look at it? So Siman can also be about a symbol that we have for us. It can also be like, I wanna view it as a compass. So by seeing what our ancestors did, right or wrong, good or bad, we can use it as a way to either be more like them or unlike them. So that it doesn't have to be something that's destiny, but we can use it as a tool in order, like a compass, to see what direction we want to go in. Let's look at box number 2. This is from Maimonides Rabban on Bereshit 12:6. Do I have someone that wants to read for us?
And Abram passed through the land. I will tell you a principle by which you will understand all the coming portions of Scripture concerning Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is indeed a great matter which our rabbis mentioned briefly, saying, whatever has happened to the patriarchs is assigned to the children. It is for this reason that the verses narrate at great length the account of the journeys of the patriarchs, the digging of the wells, and other events. Now someone may consider them unnecessary and of no useful purpose, but in truth they all serve as a lesson for the future. When an event happens to any one of the three patriarchs, that which is decreed to happen to his children can be understood concerning all decisions of, quote unquote, the guardians angels. Know that when they proceed from a potential decree to a symbolic act, the decree will in any case be effected.
Great. So we're going to actually look into Bereshit to see some examples of this. So you don't have to take it from my mouth or from even more so. I can never be like Maimonides from Maimonides' writing. So I have an assistant over here who's going to read from Bereshit 12, verse 10 from Lech Lecha.
There was a famine in the land, and Avram went down to Egypt to sojourn there. For the famine was severe in the land. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. If the Egyptians see you and think she is his wife, they will kill me and let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may remain alive thanks to you.
All right, so we see that there's a famine. Abraham leaves the new land he just went to that God would show him, and he goes down to Egypt, and he's worried that Sarai might be taken by Pharaoh and by the household, and that he will be killed. So he asked her to be his sister, and we know that doesn't actually go so well. So do we think that Isaac has learned anything from this? No. Do you think he's destined to repeat the ills of his father? Maybe he saw it and didn't know that it was ill, or is it easy to just fall into a habit, even of your ancestors? But we're going to see that God actually has a message for him. Can you read for me, please? My system, and ask your help again. We're in Bereshit 26:1.
I didn't know this was a recurring role. I love doing this stuff, by the way. Thank you. There was a famine in the land, and from the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham, aside from the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham, and Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines in Gerar. The Lord had appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I pointed out to you. Reside in this land, and I will be with you and bless you, and I will assign all these lands to you and to your heirs, fulfilling the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your heirs as numerous as the stars in the heaven of heaven, and assign to your heirs all these lands, so that the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your heirs. It is much.
Wonderful. So we see that when there was another famine, and it even says here, like the famine that turned the times of Abraham, that Isaac wants to go down to Egypt, and God intervenes and says, no, stay in the land. This is important. Thank you so much for reading. We actually were at a teaching, Irv and I, recently, where we learned that you're not allowed to turn down a role assigned by a community member to lead. And so this is like, even though you didn't take the offer for an aliyah, you took the offer to read. So thank you, and for being a recurring role. Yeah, exactly. The Union for Torah Assistant Readers. So then there's something interesting that happened. So not only did Isaac wants to go down to Egypt because of the famine, and God intervenes and says, maybe it was right or wrong, Abraham did that before, but this time you must stay in the land. Don't worry, I will bless you. There's a blessing connected to the land. And something else happens. If we're going to turn the page, if you want to follow along or just listen, in Bereshit 26, 6, so Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of the palace asked him about his wife, he said, she's my sister. Sounds familiar, right? For he was afraid to say my wife, thinking the men of this place might kill me on account of Rivkah, for she is beautiful. So we see that he actually repeats what his father had done, and it doesn't go so well for him as again. So we can see this idea that Maimonides is putting forth, Ramban's putting forth, that there's somehow that we're destined to repeat what our ancestors have done. So either maybe that it comes again another opportunity for us to change what had happened in the past, to learn, Or sometimes it's just easy once objects are set in motion, they stay in motion, like inertia.
There's a difference between the two. In the first one, Abraham tells Sarah to say she's his sister. In the second one, Isaac says she's my sister. So in one sense, Sarah is implicated in the first. Rivka is not implicated in the second.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. That has a whole nother, like, to unpack around there. What does that mean of involving your wife in the plot or not involving her? What is it? Is it more making her an accomplice to the potential crime, or saving her from it that she doesn't even have her voice taking away? So there, that is beautiful to notice the differences that arise. There's one other thing I want us to look at while we're in Bereshit, and it's about the digging of wells. Does anyone know about the wells that Abraham had dug and also then Isaac had redug? So that was mentioned by Ramban. And so you should be there. Do you see where it says about wells? Would you like to read this? Oh. Oh. Yeah.
Dug anew the wells.
So Isaac dug anew the wells.
Okay.
We're at 26:18.
Page 151 in Eitz Chaim. Isaac dug anew the wells which had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, and which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham's death. And he gave them the same names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants digging in the wadi found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." He named that well Esek because they contended with him. And when they dug another well, they disputed over that one also, so he named it Sitnah. He moved from there and dug yet another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so he called it Rehoboth, saying, "Now at last the Lord has granted us ample space to increase in the land."
So we can see he dug the wells that had been dug by his father, and he had the same issues that were arising with quarrels with his neighbors. So it's interesting about, was Isaac repeating what his father had done because he looked up to his father and respected him, or was he doing it just because it was out of habit? So we're going to look now at the third box, Exodus 25, Shemot 25, and I'm going to read this and see if you can guess where this is from. "You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, your God, Hashem, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me." Does anyone know where this is from? And also, what do you think about this, that the guilt of the parents?
From the Ten Commandments.
Exactly. It's from the Ten Commandments. So in our Aseret Dibrot, we have this command, this ask by God, but we also have about almost this, it could be almost vindictive or a weird kind of prophecy, the guilt of the parents, the third and fourth generation. How do we feel about the guilt of the parents befalling onto the children? Do we think that it's a consequence, or do we think that it's a punishment? Do we think it's fair? Do we think it's justice?
I think it's a punishment. I think it's a punishment because you should not beat your kids at all, and that's part of the Ten Commandments. That you should not lay a hand on any child or anybody.
Yeah, definitely. We shouldn't hurt our children. And so maybe then it becomes as a warning. Even maybe then the parents wouldn't act in a respectable manner to adhere to mitzvot, but maybe they would do that so that it doesn't have to befall, any negativity would befall onto their children. So maybe they might not be motivated to do something for themselves to act a certain way, but they would act a certain way for their offspring. But this definitely has been a passage that has troubled many people, of wondering is how shouldn't a child have the opportunity to make their own choices and their own decisions and have their own chance for innocence and not have to have any repercussions from their parents. So I'm going to look now, we're going to look together at box 4 from Exodus 34, and I'm going to sing it and see if you can think about where this takes place in our liturgy. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed Le'olafim, Notzer Ayon V'Pesha, V'Chata V'Nakeh. And then it continues on the verse. Lo Yanakeh. So where is this from? What do we think about this? We're saying, God, God, you are compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1000th generation, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, yet not remitting all punishment. So why don't we often say that in our liturgy? Why is the last part omitted? So what are your thoughts that here you're seeing that it says that not all punishment is actually omitted? And then here it says, visiting the iniquity of parents upon children and children's children to the 3rd and 4th generation. How do we feel about that? So do we know where this is from? What do we think about that? That second part of the phrase is missing, and the 3rd and 4th generation.
Well, we recite that when we take out the Torah on the holidays.
Yes.
And on the Shlosh Regalim, and so that's part of the liturgy, and it's an important part of the liturgy. We say it 3 times, which gives it greater emphasis. But the other part of it is that the reality is that what we do has implications for future generations. And what we do positively and what we do negatively has implications for future generations. And it could be that it really is to 4 generations. And beyond that, we have to search for what our ancestors are, and what not only what our ancestors are, but who they were and what characteristics. But I know characteristics of my great-grandparents. I know no characteristics of my great-great-grandparents. I've never heard stories told about them, or if I did, then I was a young child when my grandparents were alive, and did not hear that, and did not hear their story of their grandparents. There's a limit to what the oral transmission becomes, unless you have a very special ancestor, and then it comes back. But we now also know that that's also true genetically. And that is scientifically, a whole range of things occur within the family, and that occurs for generations and generations.
Just to add to that, I think it also depends on the number of ways we imagine the word God can be used in a sentence. And when God is doing something, is it that an outer force is imposing it upon us, or this is one way of discussing in grand terms the human condition? And as Dr. Birnbaum said, our ancestors had a sense that our true linear connection to our ancestors probably doesn't go forward or back more than 4 generations. If my great-great-grandparent made a mistake, I'm probably not paying the price for it. But there may have been things that my great-grandparents did that set in motion certain streams of family dynamics that might still be impacting me whether I know it or not. And at some point, that transmission is over. So Poked avon avod al banim v'al banim al shleshim v'al ribeim. They knew something, whether that's God forcing it to happen or God creating a world in which that's about the limit of the impact that one person can have on another 4 generations later.
You want to make it visceral for all of you. Think of the generation, and we have multiple generations of immigration, right? The greatest thing my grandparents did for me was to leave Europe. The greatest thing that some of you did for your children was to leave Iran. And that will have implications for multiple generations in a very real way. I don't know when your ancestors left, but they certainly had implications for you. At some point, that dissipates.
Very well spoken from both rabbis. And I was thinking just that about when you come from Ellis Island, our ancestors, or Castle Rock, how we're not, they could have chose to stay in maybe Europe. They were in DPW camps. They could have gone to England. They could have went to Israel, or they came to America, and how that changed our course of path. Or my parents, my dad grew up in Brooklyn. My mom was in Philadelphia, and they both independently moved to California and then met here. And so I live in California. And how does that change my trajectory of my life, being on the West Coast and a West Coast Jew versus an East Coast Jew?
I'm reading a book now. It's called The Sum of Us by Heather McGee, and it's talking about generational poverty from the enslavement of human beings to, and she is trying to figure out why white people felt, there's a study that said white people feel more racism than black people feel. A zero-sum game. If I gain something if I lose something as a white person, then, if I lose something because if I gain something because I'm black, then white people feel they lost something. It's zero sum. If I gain something, you lose something. Instead of, if it increases for me, it increases for everybody. The pie gets bigger, not the pie gets smaller. And I was thinking about this third and fourth generations of how we embedded in our laws, redlining and ways in which we restricted generational wealth through not being able to buy a home, or not being able to attend a school, or not being able to have, get a scholarship. And, so it's hard to read this, and yet I think we're experiencing it in our society. And I also was thinking about trauma, the generational trauma, that my mother was an immigrant, my grandmother was an immigrant. My dad was born here, but his parents were immigrants. And what that impact of being an immigrant, leaving everything behind, starting from scratch, it was just how that has impacted, my family.
I'll just add, related to trauma, that I know that now they do say that beyond the genes that we pass to our children, we also pass certain factors that affect the expression of genes. And it does go about, they think that it does go 3 to 4 generations. So it kind of works with this, that the actual expression of the genes is related to events that happened, I think mostly to the mother, but
It dissipates,
3 to 4.
It dissipates because there are marriages and marriages. So, what becomes 1, then becomes 2, then becomes 4, then becomes 16.
So we have the inertia of our parents, what our parents and grandparents, great-grandparents set in motion for us. We have how the habits and ways they've taught us or we've mirrored from them, and also the expression of our genes, their care from them, and how trauma can store also that trauma. Yeah.
I was telling the rabbi that there's a very interesting thing, which is I can tell you the name of my great-grandfather because I know my grandfather's Hebrew name to be called to the Torah, and I've seen it on a yahrzeit plaque, but I don't know the name of my great-great-grandfather because I can't tell you who the father of my great-grandfather, of my great-grandfather was, because I've never known his Hebrew name, and I would bet that most of us can go back to that, except in communities where you live to see 4 and 5 generations.
So that's everyone's homework, to go look up at a family tree and find out the Hebrew names of your great-great-great-great-grandparents. So I just wanted to show you that on that box 4, it comes from the Festival Torah service. We also have in our High Holiday Liturgy. And if you want to look here, you can see how that last part is missing. It was removed from the liturgy because we want to focus on the positive and having merit for 1,000 generations, not having the iniquity of our parents to sin passed down. I also want to offer a perspective about this as well is, when is the deadline for Mashiach to come? We believe that Mashiach's going to come at what year? There's kind of like a catch-all that if we don't have Mashiach come by a certain time, if we don't bring on the Messianic era ourselves, there's an idea in Kabbalah and Hasidut that Mashiach will arrive at a given year. 6,000. What year are we at right now? We're 5,785 for 2 more weeks. So we have it's so right around the corner. So if we're not able to bring it on ourselves and to enter that Messianic age, then it will be the year 6,000. So I also think it's interesting, as you're talking about it dissipates, maybe that there is this cycle that we are caught in the carousel, the hamster wheel, the Ferris wheel of 3 to 4 generations of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents and great-grandparents. But then if we can't seem how to get our way out, we're stuck in a lab rat in the maze, God's like, I will remove all obstacles for you by then. Because sometimes it's so hard if we're just repeating the habits of our parents. And maybe Isaac didn't know it was bad when Abraham and Sarah went down to Egypt. Maybe they never shared with him, yeah, we shouldn't have actually gone there when there was a famine. We should have stayed in the land. Or they never shared, I had asked Sarah to say that she was my wife to Isaac. So he wouldn't have known that that was a bad decision. But somehow there's this, Hashem removes it, or God removes it. So even if we can't make the changes ourselves, it's removed. So, but I do believe we can actually make changes in our life. So I'm gonna turn the page for us to the back, the 5th box. We're running low on time, so I'm gonna read this really quick. But I wanted us to just think about, besides generations of where sometimes we can get stuck and we can make decisions out of habit or inertia or even the iniquity of our parents, how in our own life is it hard for us to sometimes break our habits or cycles? So it's called Autobiography in 5 short chapters, but think about it, instead of 3 to 4 generation, 3 or 4 chapters. I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in, I am lost, I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's habit. It's my fault. I know where I am, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street.
Great. It gives you the dynamics of life.
Yeah.
About learning a lesson.
And I think that's what is the spirit of Teshuva. And so I just bless us all that in these 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, if we see the hole, we don't see the hole, but to know that one day we will see the hole and be able to walk around it and then be able to walk down a different street.